Hi there, I'm Gene Benson. Welcome back to our Essential Vectors series sponsored by Avemco Insurance. In this edition, we will look at some essential information regarding ground effect. To understand ground effect, we must review the concepts of lift and drag. Here's the lift formula. We can reach back into our initial flight training and recall that the total lift produced is the product of the coefficient of lift times 1/2 the value of the air density times the wing area times the velocity squared. The coefficient of lift is a constant in the formula. It is determined by the characteristic of the airfoil and the angle of attack at which it is flying. Then, for a quick review of drag, parasite drag is all the drag that is not involved in creating lift. Induced drag is a byproduct of lift. When we put them together, we have the total drag affecting the airplane at a particular time. Remembering how vectors work, induced drag is a byproduct of lift and increases with the angle of attack due to the rearward component of lift. The graphic shows what we can expect as airspeed increases, let's say during the initial climb immediately after takeoff. The parasite drag is increasing with the square of the airspeed as we accelerate. The induced drag will decrease as the angle of attack decreases. The total drag will decrease initially, then increase as we continue to gain airspeed. So we can finally talk about ground effect. We will talk about what it appears to be, what it really is, what effect it has on airplane performance, and how it can help us and how it can hurt us. It seems that as we fly close to the surface, a cushion of air forms below the airplane, and this was long thought to be the case. In reality, the airplane's wingtip vortices are striking the ground and increasing the amount of lift produced. When an aircraft in flight comes within several feet of the ground, or water, a change occurs in the three-dimensional flow pattern around the aircraft because the vertical component of the airflow around the wing is restricted by the surface. This alters the wing's upwash, downwash, and wingtip vortices. In technical terms, the same coefficient of lift is produced with a slightly lower angle of attack. The decreased angle of attack yields a decrease in the amount of induced drag produced. We can think of this as borrowed performance, that is repaid when the airplane climbs out of ground effect. Ground effect is determined by the wing's height above the ground in relation to the airplane's wingspan. I want to stress that while ground effect is very real and can significantly impact airplane performance, it's only effective when we are very, very near the surface. When the wing is at a height equal to its span, the reduction in induced drag is only 1.4%. However, when the wing is at a height equal to 1/4 its span, the reduction in induced drag is 23.5%, and when the wing is at a height equal to 1/10 its span, the reduction in drag is 47.6%. Here's another graph showing the same thing, but note that this one is showing the percentage of induced drag remaining rather than percentage of reduction. We will come back to this one in just a moment. Just for reference, here are some approximate dimensions for a Cessna 172. Note the wingspan of about 36 feet, and that the bottom of the wing is about 6 feet above the ground. Yes, I know this can vary from model to model, and it also depends on the tires and their inflation, but just bear with me on this. Returning to this graph, we can see that when the airplane is on the ground, the underside of the wing is about 17% of the wingspan above the ground. That means that the best we can experience is about a 62% of the induced drag that we would have in flight. If this was a low-wing airplane with the same wingspan, we would have less induced drag due to ground effect. But what happens when we begin our climb? As we climb, and the wing reaches 36 feet in height above the ground, a climb of only about 30 feet, that's all it is, we're at 100% of the wingspan, and the benefit of ground effect is gone. Let's look at a typical general aviation low-wing airplane, the Piper Warrior. The wingspan is about the same as the Cessna 172, but it is difficult with the amount of dihydro in the wing, but let's just assume that the wing is 3 feet above the ground when the airplane is parked. Now the wing is just about 8% of the wingspan above the ground. Again, returning to this graph, we can see that when the Warrior is on the ground, the underside of the wing is about 8% of the wingspan above the ground. That means that the best we can experience is about a 48% of the induced drag that we would have in flight. This illustrates the difference between a low-wing airplane and a high-wing airplane in regard to ground effect. But what happens when we begin our climb? This FAA graphic shows the reduction in thrust required to achieve the same velocity when operating in ground effect. And this FAA graphic shows the increase in coefficient of lift at a given angle of attack when operating in ground effect. The benefit of ground effect is most noticeable during a takeoff, especially one that requires maximum airplane performance. This is a view getting ready to depart from the Aspen, Colorado Airport on runway 33. The airport elevation is 7,820 feet. Note the rising terrain ahead. Even a very capable small general aviation airplane could be challenged by this on a warm day. This graphic from the FAA, which illustrates how ground effect can be used to the pilot's advantage during a takeoff, shows us various steps. Let's look at those stages individually. We know that ground effect will decrease our induced drag as we begin the takeoff roll. We note that as we accelerate, the airplane may fly at a lower indicated airspeed. We become airborne and remain in ground effect until we have accelerated to at least Vx or maybe even to Vy, depending on the obstacles or the terrain ahead. We must note that we will repay that borrowed performance as we gain altitude, and that ground effect will no longer be assisting us as our wing climbs to an altitude above that of our wingspan. Failure to understand ground effect can hurt us. The most common way that can happen is to attempt to climb too steeply, depart ground effect at too low an airspeed that would sustain our upward trajectory. If this happens, the airplane will begin to sink. Now, if it sinks significantly, that increases the angle of attack, and it results in a stall, possibly at low altitude. This can happen on the initial takeoff or on a go-around. If the desired airspeed on final approach is excessive, it usually results in the airplane floating. And why is that? Because the airplane has entered ground effect, has less induced drag, and therefore less total drag. Before touchdown can be made, the airplane may be well past the desired landing point, and the available runway may be insufficient. This can usually be avoided by closely controlling the airspeed on final approach and making sure that that approach is stabilized. An early decision to execute a go-around is critical to safety. The early decision can make the difference between a successful go-around or a runway overrun. Another issue can be longer exposure to crosswinds if the airplane floats on landing due to ground effect. Several runway excursion accidents have occurred with the pilots saying that they had been blown off the side of the runway as the airplane floated in ground effect. So in summary, we looked at what ground effect appears to be, what it really is, what effect it has on our airplane performance, how it can help us, and how it can hurt us. The larger lesson is that we always must consider how ground effect will influence aircraft performance on takeoff, landings, and go-arounds. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Avemco Insurance for their sponsorship. For much more safety-related material, please check out our website, vectorsforsafety.com. And please remember to fly like your life depends on it. I'm Gene Benson.